So I thought I'd do a bit of an overview of sort of an idea to development and kind of get a prototype working of a product. This is a pretty simple one, not sort of the main sort of things we're looking at doing. Most of the stuff's a whole lot more complicated and more expensive to do that, but here's sort of an example. Had 85, had it quite a while, goes with me pretty much everywhere, maybe a few day hunts I don't take it. But yeah, invaluable having, it's a reasonable spotting scope, best I could afford at the time. Super happy with it. Came with these end caps. This one clips in here. It's really sturdy actually. This end had like a rubber thing that went over top, had a little rubber tab on it. It didn't clip in like that end. Had a little rubber tab and I just bungeed it through there to hold it on, but the bungee broke because the rubber was quite thin and I lost it. So I've been using a sock on this end. So that's part of what kind of spurred this project. Also this thing, it's like 89 grams, so it's not overly heavy, but it just feels heavy for what it is, and I don't know if you can hear that. I just dropped it on the ground. That's it thudding. So it just seems unnecessarily heavy. I thought it could do something lighter. So that's kind of where this project came from. You'll see now process of doing that prototype, making that, and then at the end I will kind of give a bit of review and discuss kind of the actually using it. Cheers. So here's the first prototype, well kind of the second. This is the first one, but I set that up the wrong way. So obviously didn't cut properly. But here's this one, and I'll tidy it up. And then, well, the first thing is to get, I was going to vacuum bag over the top of it to get the carbon to stay down on these features, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut a female version as well, and then I coat both and then just put the fibre in the middle and then just sandwich them down on top of each other. So this is starting up the operation to cut the female version of that. So I've got these two male parts coated in, this is just like aluminium foil tape. You can see it's not like perfect, but I should have covered most areas, so I'm not gonna, little gaps there, but should be able to break that off the wood. But this is gonna be able to mean that the carbon epoxy releases reasonably easily. Now obviously this is not how I'd make a final product, but given that just the speed at which I can prototype something and the cost at what I can do it, because aluminium's not cheap. So the female parts will still be machined, but they're pretty close. So what I'm going to do is mix up some resin and start laying it up on here, and then it'll go off a little bit, which is probably a good thing, because then by the time I get the other molds coated in foil, the resin's going to be a bit tackier, so the fiber's not going to distort as much. And so I'm just using carbon, the standard 12. This is kind of the go-to that everyone uses. It's super easy to shape. And I'm going to try and use some of this stuff over top. This is carbon and MTNGear, I think, which is kind of like Kevlar, but it's easy to work with. It's kind of like almost what you'd find in Dyneema. So it's not as strong, but it's a bit more durable than carbon. And I liked it just because it's got a bit of colour to it, so if I'm putting these caps down on the ground all the time, it's going to help me to find them. So these moulds have come out of the machine. Just scrap wood. Instead of, because they're so fiddly to get aluminium foil tape in there, I'm just going to put plastic, and it won't get a perfect finish. You'll see it'll bunch up there where I push that one on a little bit, but it'll get close enough. And so hopefully the wood's strong enough it doesn't crack when I push it down there, but I'm going to put it on there and then stick it in the press, and then that should be it for, I don't know, 5 hours till it goes off. Although I might take it home and stick it in the oven. Probably needs about half an hour at like 50 degrees in the oven, and it'll be pretty hard. So here's the 2 molds squeezed up. The top one, small one, so that's the lens, the eyepiece cap. Bottom one, the objective cap. The problem is here, I would love to get quite a bit more pressure onto it, but because one, just because it's not like great wood that I've used, you can see there's cracks there. So if I push too much more pressure on it, the molds would just pop apart. Also with the plastic, how I've done is obviously as it goes down, it bunches up more. So there's more material in there, and that's kind of pushing the mold out as well, which doesn't help. And I haven't compensated for that in how I cut them. They're just kind of not quite, but pretty much straight. So yeah, but it still looks like that's pushed down pretty hard. I designed it for, I'd given the gap between the pieces 1.2 mil, and that being piece of carbon is generally 0.2 of a mil thick. So I've done 5 sheets, so about 1 mil, probably slightly less because the top cutted layer was a bit thinner, and then the remaining 0.2 was to allow for the plastic and the foil. And the bottom one doesn't look like it's compressed down quite as much. That's partly just, I would say, because I pressed the top one down quite hard initially in the mold without the bottom one. And the bottom one is just, there's more material, so it's just thicker too. Bigger shape, more pressure. But I think that's starting to squeeze down. You can see the resin starting to come out. It's really tacky, so that doesn't help either. It just takes a whole lot more force to push that resin out. But we'll give it about 4 hours. It's in the sun, it's reasonably warm. Should go off. Come back and have a look tonight. Okay, these are the final parts. Unfortunately, I didn't capture all the final kind of pulling them out of the molds for you because, like I said, it was a 1 a.m. before I had to get up super early. Been kind of a long day. Here's the male bits. The female parts of the mold basically kind of got destroyed when I pulled them apart. They weren't quite hard, fully hard when I had to get them ready to take away. So what I did, trim them down, obviously. There was carbon that came out on these flat bits, trim them down, sand them off a bit, and then I just left them on here, and just to keep the shape correct so I didn't deform it all, and then just took them down the coast with me like that, pop them off when we load it up, and then stuck them on my spotting scope. So they work really well, seal really good, almost seal too good. I'm going to make them looser. They kind of, they protect their lens super well. Alright, combined they were 31 grams total, whereas this is 89 plus using something for that end. So about a third of the weight, and super sturdy. I mean, I guess you could puncture something through that, but it would probably puncture through that as well. And yeah, it'd be a lot of force. They almost seal too well. The next version I'm going to make a little bit different because you get a bit of moisture in there and it'll be quite hard to get off. This end too, with the rubber eyepiece, I'm worried that if I'm not careful at some point they get stuck on real good. I'm going to damage that, pull it off, something like that. So yeah, but I don't know if anyone would be interested in some lens caps like these. I mean, I'm pretty rough on my gear, but one thing I really try and protect is the ends of the glass. I mean, that's the important parts. So yeah, if you're interested, flick me a message. This might be a sort of a project. Look at getting some product ready. February 21. I might slightly change them because they seal so well. I might do it so they instead of being held on just by jamming on there, might go back to the bungee system. That way they stay together also. Might be a bit easier for keeping track of them. Don't blow away in the wind. You can tie them around your tripod legs, something like that. So, yep, worked great. Small improvements to be made. I think will make them better. But they seal perfectly. Like, there's no way anything's getting in or out of there under that. But yeah, like I said, not necessarily the easiest to get on and off. So yeah, cheers for watching the video. You see a little bit of behind the scenes. This is a pretty simple project. It was like 2.5 days from designing it up on the computer to actually pulling these bits out of the mold. So yeah, I generally think what we do is much more complicated than that. But this is kind of part of it when we get on to something finally. Things can happen pretty quickly, and yeah, kind of pulling them out of the mold. And that part, prototyping things, is it's almost like, you know, when a new piece of gear arrives in the mail, that sort of thing. You know, you're excited to pull it out, see how it works. So yeah, cheers for watching. Hope it was interesting. See a bit behind the scenes and sort of like a genuine first prototype, sort of from idea to, you know, actually using this. I spent 7 days or whatever on the west coast. Some pretty gnarly terrain, from sweltering hot conditions to snow. So yeah, cheers.